I want to tell you the story. I've never told the story in a video. I've told it maybe a couple times, but I actually just learned this, and I believe it'll bless you. Especially if you can't really see God's ways. And a lot of times we think we've reached the full circle moment that God's been trying to bring, and it's because He's so good. And it's because everything aligns when God is there. Everything. Well, my father passed away about a month ago, and it's been so complex because people can't understand that not all grief is good grief, but it doesn't mean that it's not grief. And it doesn't mean that that's not the only father that you'll ever have earthly. And no one could understand that but my sister and I. And this month's just been interesting. I had a business trip, I had a personal trip, I had a trip for my best friend who had passed last year, and I've just kind of been everywhere and just kind of hiding out, with my friends or alone or in the quiet with my children. And this space I'm sitting right now is so beautiful. I just come in here so that no one was around and it wasn't loud, because there's a lot of movement this evening where a lot of us are working late. And I found something out. So when my father did the worst of what he did, and he planned to get rid of all of this, in order to get away from an ankle monitor, you have to be in one of two places: the doctor or your lawyer's office. Well, my mama told me something that I never knew. I don't talk about it a lot because it's just hard to think, but my father had went to my mother's work and thrown her in her own trunk. And for whatever reason, she had her cell phone in the trunk. She had forgot it. And that's just so God. But in order for no one to know that he was gone, he had to make an appointment with his lawyer, where my mother sat in the trunk while he went in and talked to him. And he told her, "I will deal with you later." I can't imagine the fear that come across my mother. And when I was on my trip, I got COVID. It was beautifully terrible. And I was talking to my husband about this office. I'm like, I think it was an adventure. I think it was a summer adventure. I loved it, but I'm just as successful at home. I don't really need to be here. And he said to me, "I don't think you need to get rid of it. I think there's a reason you're there. And I want to know that you are reaching your fullest potential, because I believe in you." Well, that kind of annoyed me, And as much as I love him, I'm thinking, I'm tired. My father just passed. I just want to be at home. But I get home and I finally have that talk with my mom about what this grief means to us, and how complex and hard and sad it all was. And my mama began to talk about what had happened, because we talked with each other about it when we were having a hard time. And she said, she was like, and the criminal defense attorney, I won't say his name, but his defense was, what was it that my family had done? Me as a 12-year-old kid, my mom as a battered wife. What could we have done to make him feel like he was just going crazy? And that was the defense. Incompetence, which wasn't true. It was like that our whole life. And I don't say that to rag on my father. I say that because I'm trying to tell you a story. And when my mama began to talk about that, she said, it's close to your office. She was like, the building by she describes it. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. And she says, the building where, and she thinks that I don't know what she's talking about, but I do. Because as I'm talking to her, I'm sitting in that office. This office was the office of the criminal defense attorney. And every time I look out that window back there is where my mother would have been in the trunk. I want you to think about that. asked the Lord what verse he wanted me to bring you, and I didn't even know what this was going to be. And it's Matthew 7, 1 through 5, and it says this: don't pick on people. Jump on their failures, criticize their faults, unless, of course, you want the same treatment. That critical spirit has a way of boomeranging. It's easy to see a smudge on your neighbor's face and be oblivious to the ugly sneer on your own. And I remember we were so traumatized. The case went on for 3 years. My father was in a coma with ice bags on his body for years and an open skull. And I grieved my father a long time ago. But that man, and I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, and I know we all have to bring home the bacon, but I just could never understand criminal defense. And I remember he was so heinous and mean and hurtful. And I'll never forget writing a letter, and the district attorney is still a really good friend of mine, and she's moved on to private law, but I love her and she's not far from me. And I think about her often, and I see her sometimes. And I remember I was afraid to face this man because he was so mean. And he made everything sound like you were a kid and maybe you were louder. I was so quiet. That's a story for another day. And she said, well, do you think you can write a letter? Well, over the years I found out that my words were anointed, and I think that's when I knew I was little. I wrote that letter crying, and I know God was with me when I wrote it, because I don't even remember what I said, except for the very prophetic utterance of, I haven't been living with my father. I've been living with something that come from down under. I feel like I've been living with the demonic. And even as a child, that was my verbiage. And the judge tacks on an extra 10 years, and he says, for the little girl. So today, I sit here in this beautiful office. I'll show it to you one day. So beautiful. And the full circle, I thought, was that I was close to a court where I would have to deal with the finality of his life. As sad as it was, I wasn't the full circle. The full circle was that as a little girl, the man that really come against us with my father wasn't even able to speak and move about yet again, was this man. And I don't hold anything against him. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. But when I tell you I dance in this office, I mean it. I didn't understand why, but I would praise in this office. I would walk around this office. I would dance. I've made so many friends in this office. It's so much joy. And what once lived here as criticizing your family for wanting to off them all became a space where I get to talk to people one-on-one about Jesus, whether it's locally, face-to-face, or whether it's you guys on my Zoom. And this went from a space of hurt and pain and suffering to a space of healing and hope and salvation. And you just can't make that up. The Lord is near the brokenhearted, and your full circle moment isn't what you think it is. No, my friend. It is far better. So do me a favor and just hold on a little longer. Do me a favor, and even when you're celebrating and praising for what the Lord has done, keep doing that. But know that He's not finished yet. The God that split the sea won't just put a ripple in the river. He's going to let you stretch forth your staff. And slaves you will be no more.